hey, we're just teaching them about their bodies. True. I can't argue with that. We're teaching them what they can do with their bodies. True. But is it guided by principles and morals? Is there an understanding that this is how our body functions, however, or we respect it in this way? Cartoons, there's lots of cartoons now for kids that show alternative sexual lifestyles in cartoons, right? The topic is being introduced. If it's already being taught in that way, what are we waiting for? These are recent headlines. I read one to you earlier, but one of them, this was a headline from June 2021. Sex ed teacher out at Dalton, it's a school in New York, after masturbation lesson for first graders. This is true. This just happened this past June. All right, so a teacher. And if we look at New York, Illinois, Wisconsin, they're talking about sex ed for K through 12. Not just junior high, but you're talking about kindergarten, 5, 6 years old. They're looking at the European method, right? Is this terrible? Well, it depends on who you ask, right? If you ask the educators, they're saying, hey, we're just teaching them about their bodies. True. I can't argue with that. We're teaching them what they can do with their bodies. True. But is it guided by principles and morals? Is there an understanding that this is how our body functions, however, or we respect it in this way? Cartoons, there's lots of cartoons now for kids that show alternative sexual lifestyles in cartoons, right? The topic is being introduced. If it's already being taught in that way, what are we waiting for? We can't afford to wait. Here's what I would say. Know what your kids are looking at. Don't just, we're past the days of, oh, they're watching cartoons. Now I'm like, wait, what cartoon are you watching? I remember my kids were watching a cartoon one time, innocent cartoons, and they were watching it on a streaming service online, and the streaming service happened to have commercials, and they came in screaming into the room because after their cartoon, which the cartoon was probably appropriate for, shall we say, 4 or 5 years old, all of a sudden there was an advertisement for a horror movie. On the cartoon, in between the cartoon, there's a commercial, and I'm like, who thought of that? Right? Why are we doing? We got to watch what the kids are looking at because now the internet's the wild, wild west. Right? You can get online and see anything you want. What are they being exposed to? So who's going to teach the children? If we don't teach them, they're going to learn. Nature's happening. It's not going to stop. Are we ready to teach them? We have to understand the world we're sending them into. Because can we afford to wait now? And if it's right to teach them, at what stage? So, remember Fulton Sheen? In one of his talks he said, the church drops things and the world picks them up. You ever heard of that? Right? The church lets go of things and the world picks them up and switches them around. They're not going to look Catholic if the world picks them up. We used to teach the children, why did God make us? To know him, to love him, and serve him in this world and be happy with him forever in heaven. Little Baltimore Catechism. Pretty straightforward, black and white, pretty basic. Does that sound bad at all? It doesn't say to serve myself. It doesn't say to start doing any kind of self-abuse in first grade. It doesn't say to find happiness in this world. How many times do we see sex as an advertisement tool? I'll buy the car. Wasn't going to buy it before, but the last 10 seconds of that commercial, that convinced me. Yeah, I got to buy that beer brand because they were all at the beach. Right? What does that have to do? Does the beer even taste good? I don't know. But I think I'm going to look pretty cool drinking it. They look cool. Right? It does not say use sex as a means to happiness in and of itself. And that's what we mean when we use the term sex sells. Right? It sells things. Why? Because it's impulsive. It's titillating, as we say. It does, when we think about it, it does affect the body. It's not just spiritual or mental, it's physiological. That's what we need to teach our children. Yes, it will feel good. Yes, you are going to feel this way. But there's a respect. I'm not telling you feeling that way is bad. I'm not saying don't feel that way. Nature's making you feel that way. Of course it is. I don't want you to feel ashamed about that. I want you to know how to drive the car. Yeah, you have this beautiful car, but if you don't know how to drive the gears, did you check the oil? Does it have gas? Our bodies are going to naturally change. They're naturally going to have certain instincts, impulses. Are our children ready for that? Do they know that ahead of time, or do we have to catch up? The world is going to tell them, do what thou wilt. Your pleasure's here. Don't worry about anything else. The pleasure's here now. If we feel sex is the ultimate pleasure and goal, right? Then we might as well teach the children early. That's what the world's telling you. That's what the schools are telling you. What's wrong with teaching them about this now when they're little kids? Let's prepare them for their ultimate goal. That's really what they're saying. We said our ultimate goal is to know God, love him, and serve him in this world, and be happy with him forever in heaven. Outside of our faith, sometimes they're going to say, no, our ultimate goal is just pleasure. Get the bigger car, get the bigger house, get as much pleasure as you can. When do we teach our children? We're actually teaching them from the moment of conception. Believe it or not, we're actually teaching them about sex from the moment of conception. We might not think of that, but the question is, how were they conceived? Was this child brought in with love? When they're born into the world, what do they know about mom and dad? What was the intention of the parents? How many kids find out, like I said here, did you marry because you were pregnant, forced, stressed, running away? How many kids find out, wait a minute, I was up at the altar with you in mommy's belly? And then what's the next question? Is that why you got married? So sometimes they feel like, oh, so you only got married but you didn't love each other, so I'm like a problem already, or what? Like I forced you into this? It's hard to explain to a child, no, we loved each other and this happened. Or sometimes, yeah, you know, your grandpa was there with a shotgun and I thought it was a good idea. You know, when he showed up, I thought maybe I will get married. That's not a bad idea. It depends. As kids, think about it this way. We're talking about the kids, but now we were kids once too. How do we want to think about our parents getting married or getting together? We want to know that our parents loved each other and that they wanted us. As kids, we want to feel welcome. I can tell you as a psychiatrist, I deal with a lot of kids who feel unwelcomed in their homes. My parents didn't love me. They gave me away. It never fails. If a kid went into foster care and they never really knew their parents, when they get older, they want to know who their parents were. That's always the quest, right? Where did I come from? If we hear that, no, you know, it was through in vitro and mom had you, but she never really met dad. Well, the kid's going to want to know, who's my dad? Where did I come from? Who is this person? I did not exist before. Now I exist, but everybody comes from somewhere. So this is important to consider. As we're teaching our children, from day one, we're already teaching them. The other thing we're teaching them is from how we treat our spouses on a daily basis. We're already teaching them about sex. Why? Because by the time they learn about sex, it's going to click to them that mom and dad had to have sex at one point to have me. Is the first thing they say, right? My parents had 5 kids. Maybe they were together 5 times. That's the way we like to think, right? Like, that's it. Like, we'll give them that, right? We'll give them 5 because they have 5 kids. So we don't like to think about that. But if you think about it the other way, by the way I treat my spouse, this is the first introduction to the world. We're the original school for kids. So they're seeing how man treats woman, how woman treats man, right? And then that's how they learn, what kind of spouse do I have? Who do I deserve as a spouse? This is why you hear, oh, you know, this gal, she didn't do so well in life. She said she was all over the place. She, you know, was running around. What's the first question therapists ask? Where's dad? Where was your dad? Right? It's like she has daddy issues. Why do they say that? Because she learned from dad how she should be loved, right? And then for boys, what do we call them? Mama's boys. He never grew up. He was always babied. He was this and that. Why? Well, how was mom? Right? You never really hear a girl has issues because mom was bad. I mean, you do actually. I shouldn't say you don't, because sometimes there's cases where, oh, my mom was a drug addict or this and that. We'll go with that. But assuming that that's not the case, if we're just talking about the natural learning of life, girls learn from their dad, boys learn from their mom, and that's normal, right? It's kind of a preparation for when we get married. We're learning that. Sex is a means to an end. When we talked before, I said, oh, sex can be a means to an end. It's to create a family. In the world, it's a means to an end so you can buy products, right? Like I said, you're going to buy the drink, you're going to buy the car, you're going to buy the clothes. It's a means to an end that way. Or sometimes sex is just the end. I just want to feel good. And that's it. But we forget that there's this whole combination of things that are happening, and we're teaching our children, ever since the first moment, how do we run a family? Now we're talking about sacrament. We got married. We're running a family. It's not as simple as, oh, I love you, I'll just marry you. That's you can go to the courthouse and do that. But if you're coming and you're supposed to have marriage prep, what's the point of marriage prep? I'm not saying it's the most ideal prep out there. I'm saying that there's a lot more that can be done. But what's the point of marriage prep? The point of marriage prep is that as Catholics, we have a different perspective on marriage. And what we're preparing you for in those wonderful 2 classes you get before, however many, is that you're not going to get married, you're starting a family. You got to think that way because it's a different mentality. Starting a family goes back to, wait a minute, this person's going to know everything about me. I'm going to know everything about them. The smallest details that I don't want anybody to know. And guess what? My children are going to share in that. They're going to know everything about me and everything about them. Are we going to have a respectful family? What's the right age? It's not the right age, but it's more the content. Again, we're teaching children from the very beginning. They're learning about sex. They know they have their bodies. How many people don't tell their children, hey, you have private parts? Right? As a physician, when I was doing general practice, so sometimes I'd see child checks, new kids, and you talk about the private parts, right? Respect our bodies. That's already the first part. Why? And, to a child, from an adult's perspective, it's just kind of, we take it for granted. But from a child's perspective, you're teaching them, well, this is your hand, this is your arm, but certain parts of your body are private, different category. Why? Because we realize that there's a respect there because we use certain parts of our body to create life. That's the main reason that they're private. Right? It's the most intimate part of our body, even though it's no different than any other part, really, from a medical point of view. It's just an appendage, or just parts of the body, or just another fold of skin, or something. If you look at it biologically, it's just part of the body. If you look at it from even the law of nature, I'm not even going with religion, the law of nature tells us there's something to be respected there. Right? There's the potential for life, and that's why it's so crucial that we respect certain parts of our body.